Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant Line Radio. We're going to talk unit grades after SC's 27-24 loss to the Michigan Wolverines. Last time we did this, we had a bunch of high grades, Alicia. This time, I think it's going to be a little bit more all over the board.
Yeah, unfortunately, fewer A's this time around. An admirable performance, I think, from USC, but not enough admirable A's, as I'm calling them.
Yeah, let's start off here on offense. We'll get to the quarterback. Alicia, what grade did you give Miller Moss?
I'm giving Miller Moss a B-. This wasn't his best game, but it was also one of his most difficult games that he's probably going to have in his career. Under pressure, he was still he had the 5th best passing grade among quarterbacks in week 4, according to Pro Football Focus, and he faced the 2nd number of pressures. So this was an impossible task for him, and I'm going to give him a lot of credit for taking the hits, getting back up, continuing to try to do what he could to move USC down the field. Mm-hmm. He didn't get discouraged, and in the second half, he came through 3 touchdown passes. He misses out on the A for admirable here because of one play, and it's really unfortunate, but that one play was very costly. The pick six was a game changer. Ultimately, you can point to that as one of the plays that lost the game for USC, and it's the quarterback's job to protect the football first and foremost, and he didn't do that, so got to knock him down to a B-.
Yeah, 100%. I'm right there with you. I think when you look at my grade, it's also B- for all the reasons that you sort of laid out. We made our grades separately, so that we both have a B- is funny because the simpatico-ness, if you want to call it that. But I think for Miller, this could have been an A, absolutely, if not for the pick six. I think the pick six is a team pick six. I think part of it is on Miller Moss. I thought he telegraphed it a little bit too much. I don't know that I love the play call, especially when it's going to the side where Will Johnson is, and I don't know if that's by design or if that's a Miller Moss pre-snap read. Either way, I don't like the decision from that perspective. And then Zachariah Branch also played a role with where he was going on the little hitch there. So everyone sort of played a role. Other than that, though, I thought Miller Moss was pretty good. Like, he did the best he could with what he was given. We saw a great pass to Deuce Robinson for a touchdown and Jacoby Lane for a touchdown. There were a couple of big plays from him. Could he have done more? Sure. But I think it was also sort of difficult. So if anything, I think the B- is maybe a little unfair to him and maybe knocks him too much for the pick. But alas, it wasn't perfect from him. And if he would have been, a little bit more perfect without the pick six, SC wins the football game. So there's the mark there. Let's go to running backs. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm giving the running backs an A. For what was given to them in terms of the blocking in front of them, I don't know that I could ask for much more. Woody Marks is just a joy to watch play football, and he did what he could in the run game, broke off that big long run, caught a bunch of passes. He was USC's second leading pass catcher in this game. I guess the one thing you could ask of Woody Marks is that, he get into the end zone on that long run, but he rumbles his way down to the goal line, and then when USC tries to give that possession away, he gets it right back by stripping the ball, not giving up on the play. Literally all you could ask for from the running back group. I thought Quentin Joyner ran the ball as well, well as well. Obviously not their biggest day in terms of yardage, but given what's coming on the offensive line.
It wasn't on the running backs.
No.
Yeah. I agree. I think A is the way to go with the running backs. It was tough sledding in that first half. They didn't have many places to run. And they didn't gain a lot of yards. But in the second half, it got a little bit better, and you were able to see, Quentin Joyner, all 3 of his runs were successful runs. Woody Marks has the big, long run that sets up a touchdown, and then he has the big strip, which allowed a touchdown to come on the board a little bit later, too. So, I absolutely give them an A. I don't know what more you want from them, given what they were given. Let's get to the wide receivers. Alicia, what do you got for the wideouts?
I'm going with a C, and it's not for the reason that I think some people might think. I've seen a lot of criticism of Zachariah Branch this week, and I think it's mostly unfair. I know that he had one drop, and he certainly played a role in the pick six, but he was USC's leading receiver in this game. He was effectively USC's only real option for big pass plays in this game for much of the way. And I thought he did a good job of getting open and giving Miller Moss the opportunity to throw to him.
Yeah.
My issue with the unit as a whole is that there were multiple drops. Karen Hudson gets tagged with a drop, and even though they weren't officially credited with drops, I felt like there were multiple moments from across the receiving corps where guys didn't make the tough catch that USC needed them to make. Maybe not a drop,
sure,
but USC needed tough catches in a really tough game. USC needed guys to get open more quickly and more just make themselves more available. Mm-hmm. And then USC needed the big plays from the receivers at a certain point. You know, they got Jacoby Lane has a really nice touchdown, and USC does end up with 3 touchdown catches in this game. When I think about what Michigan got from Khalil Mullings and that Herculean effort from him, maybe this is asking too much, but USC's wide receivers needed to be able to give USC something like that too. Mm-hmm. And if USC wants to win the tough games like this, those receivers are going to have to deliver plays like that. And in this game, they were just not quite there.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with the rankings or the grades for the receivers. I'm going to B+. I thought the touchdowns were huge. The Deuce Robinson touchdown where he does a little dummy on the corner route and then just turns around and is in the perfect spot between some defenders for the touchdown pass in the third quarter was brilliant at a time where SC definitely needed a score. And then in the fourth quarter, to take the lead, the pass on 3rd and 16 to Jacoby Lane was brilliant. I thought the pass from Miller Moss was in the spot to allow him to make a play, but it was also double coverage, and he goes up and makes the play in the double coverage that you talked about. You said that you wanted to see some hard catches. I think that was a big moment that sort of earns them the B+ here. Yes, I agree that there could have been more. Zachariah Branch drops one on the last drive of the game. Yeah, there could have been a couple more things that that they could have done. Maybe they can get open a little bit more, but also they're going up against Will Johnson. They're going up against guys in this Michigan secondary that is pretty damn good too. So I think all things told, for me, B+ for the receivers. Let's go to the offensive line. Sorry, the tight ends before we get to the offensive line. What do you got on tight ends?
I feel I'm very harshly giving a D+ here. Okay. And part of this isn't necessarily about the players. It's just about the position. I thought that the screens to Lake McCree were counterproductive, not just because they got him injured, but because they weren't effective and they were never going to be effective. And that's certainly a play calling situation, but also, Lake McCree, again, maybe I'm asking too much, but I want him to be an absolute difference maker in this game. And he didn't really get that chance before his injury. He didn't really get open for any of those really nice sort of up the seam kind of plays that we've seen work so well for USC. And that was disappointing because USC really needed those opportunities. Yeah. Once he goes down injured, Cade Eldridge, I'm going to give the kid a lot of credit because he is out in there as a freshman doing really good work for being a freshman and being thrown into the fire. Same with Walker Lyons. But part of the pass blocking, part of the run blocking problems for USC in this game were the tight ends being involved in that. So I'm giving them a low grade on that. I think that is far more out of their control than some of the others, but it's just what I got to give that position.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a little bit unfair. I go with a C-, which is definitely close to your D+. For me, it comes down to the blocking wasn't great when they were in there to help block. I think the blocking from the running backs was better. There were a couple plays where I really noted that the running backs were able to sort of take a guy and let Miller Moss throw the ball, and didn't really see a lot of that from the tight ends. The usage of the tight ends was poor, like you mentioned, with the Lake McCree stuff. The one time that we saw that RPO up the seam on the little angle route, it was sort of more poorly thrown from Miller Moss than anything else. So I'm
and
not
well
gonna,
defended.
Yeah, and I'm not going to knock Lake McCree on that too much. And I don't know what he personally could have done more about those screens and the little dump-offs. But, yeah, I would have liked to see more from the tight ends in general. So like you said, I think this is more of a unit grade that looks at their presence more than their individual performance in that way. Let's talk about the offensive line. You gave them an F-, and I gave them an F. I don't think there's anything else we need to say.
All I need to say is that was the worst collective offensive line performance that I have seen in all of my years of watching USC.
Yeah.
There wasn't a single offensive lineman who performed at a even functional level. And that is partly because the entire unit was failing, and that's what happens. The rising tide lifts all boats. Well, the sinking tide sinks all boats as well. In this case, the second half improvement was at least an improvement, but even that was barely functional.
Yeah,
barely good enough to allow USC to have some excellent work from other parts of the offense to make up for just how bad that offensive line performance. If I could give it a grade lower than an F-, I would.
Yeah, I go with F strictly because I think the second half, if anything, if you want to be really lenient, it's a D- performance. But really the first half was truly horrendous. But really, the second half was absolutely not good, and the second half would be the worst performance you've ever seen if it wasn't for the first half. The second half, they were at least able to open up some running lanes. We saw the running backs run for 8.6 yards per carry in that second half. There was the big run from Woody Marks, but Quentin Joyner was able to find holes that were not there in the first half. So I think that gives them a little bit of credit, slightly. For the improvement there, but yeah, absolutely not able to be enough for the Trojans. Let's go to the offensive coordinator, head coach Lincoln Riley. What's your grade for him as an OC?
Yeah, I think Lincoln Riley's game plan in this one was a bit flawed coming in. I get that as a coach, you want to come in and think that your offensive line can compete with anybody that they're faced up against. I get that, but USC should have been able to recognize that there was a very good chance that Michigan was going to win those battles in the trenches. And that's what happened. And USC seemed like they didn't have an immediate contingency plan for that. The running game in the first half, running into the teeth of that Michigan defense on short yardage or at any time, was just absolutely the wrong thing to do. And it hurt not just USC's offense because they couldn't move the ball, couldn't move the chains, but it hurt USC's defense because USC's defense kept having to get thrown out there. And I think that directly leads to the scores that, at least the one Donovan Edwards score that comes later when it feels very much like USC's defense is starting to get gassed.
Yeah.
I give him credit for the adjustments in the second half. I think those worked about as well as they could have, at least salvaging what was a pretty poor first half performance. And personally, I'm not as critical of the final drive and the clock management questions that people have had. I think that at a certain point, no matter what USC did there, because of the way that the offensive line was performing, because Michigan knew what USC was essentially going to try to do in terms of running the clock there, you couldn't run the ball. So Riley tried something different. Would I have done shovel passes? No, I wouldn't, but he was trying to catch them off guard. He was trying to win the game by moving the chains, and it didn't work out for him, but I don't think that was the wrong approach to trying to go out and win the game.
Yeah, I think there's results bias there too. SC gets a stop on that last drive, the last Michigan drive. I don't think the scrutiny over the previous SC drive is there, especially because the two drives, the drive before the drive that fails with the shovel passes is the touchdown drive, the pass to Jacoby Lane that takes the lead. And then before that, there were two drives in which SC had to punt. Those are not the drives that people are pointing out to when they're critical of the play calling. It's predominantly the last drive. And that's where I think some results bias comes in. I think, you give them a C. I go with a B- strictly because of the adjustments. Yes, you're right. The game plan wasn't good. And the adjustments sort of took too long to put in there. And we didn't see SC really move the ball until the middle of that second quarter. But when you look at the second half, SC's performance in the second half on offense, I think if anything is underrated. 5.9 yards per play, not amazing, but pretty good given the competition. 261 total yards of offense, 21 offensive points, 8.6 yards per carry on the ground. Yes, there's the big run, but even if you take out the big run, Quentin Joyner, all of his runs were successful, like we talked about, and Woody Marks was able to reliably get a few yards that he was not getting in the first half. They were 6 of 12 on third down in the second half. The 261 yards, the most against a Michigan defense, except for Texas 2 weeks ago. In the last year and a half, like going back to the TCU game when Michigan lost in the Fiesta Bowl. So, obviously they lost a bunch of guys from the national championship team, and this maybe wasn't the exact same as the national championship team, but what SC was able to do in that second half was just about on par with what Texas did a couple weeks ago, and Texas did it with Quinn Ewers at quarterback, a healthy offensive line, I think. Like, they didn't have the offensive line issues that SC did, and they were still right there, almost tick for tat with statistics. So SC made chicken soup out of chicken shit. And I think that an offense that sort of goes to Lincoln Riley, despite, yes, valid criticisms when it comes to play calling on those final drives where they really needed to maybe eat more clock, I wouldn't have called the shovel passes. We talked about this in the podcast this week. But I think the adjustments still made a big impact. Let's go to defense. Defensive line, what do you got up front?
People are going to look at the 290 yards rushing and 32 yards passing and make some pretty incorrect assumptions about the quality of USC's defensive line in this performance. Mm-hmm. I thought they were excellent. I'm giving them a B here for kind of nitpicky reasons, but okay. In the end, they limited Michigan to 3.1 yards per carry outside of those 3 big runs. I thought they were disciplined. I thought they were stout. I thought they were put in a tough spot, having Michigan run at them over and over and over again and being in a spot where you would expect them to wear down. And at the end, I think they were very admirably holding up. But in the end, USC lost this game because they gave up too many short yardage conversions to Michigan when they were make or break plays. And that is, again, where I needed USC's defensive line to completely hold their ground, to form a wall. They weren't quite able to do that. I don't think that's a sin, but that's the reality of what happened, and that's why they get the B.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm still going A. I think that, 290 yards. If you didn't watch the game, you only looked at the stat book, is damning for this defensive line. But there were the 3 big runs, and to me, those 3 big runs are on the second level of the defense, if anything. When you talk about a long run, like, you need the guys on the back end to sort of be able to make a tackle. And I thought the defensive line was great, about as strong as they could be. Yeah, you talk about, like, they didn't make a negative play, a tackle for loss on that last drive after the long run. But they made Michigan go to 4th and goal. They made them convert a 3rd and 1. Like, they made Michigan work as hard as they possibly could to get in the end zone. I know you don't get points for that, but, like, it's not like the defensive line was just letting Khalil Mullins walk all over them on every single play. Like, that's not how those 290 yards came to be. So I give them an A. Let's go to linebackers. What do you got?
The linebackers, I'm giving a B+. I thought that Eric Gentry was an absolute monster. 12 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack. the most textbook forced fumble that you will ever see in your life. That is teaching tape right there. He continues to prove how incredibly important he is to this team. MVP of the defense, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
They don't get an A because we talk about those big long runs that cost USC the game. Those runs happen because somewhere among the linebacker core, there's a misfit. And, you know, on at least one of them, it's Easton Mascarenas-Arnold that is ultimately the first line of defense that lets him through. Your running back, your linebackers need to make those plays every time. They can't take a play off against a team like Michigan. Unfortunately, it happened just a couple times, and unfortunately, it cost USC the game. So get knocked down to a B+.
Yeah. I'm going to go B+ also. Pretty much echo everything that you said. I thought Eric Gentry is getting to the point where I think we can definitively say, maybe this is premature, but I don't think it is. I think he's the best USC linebacker since Sua.
It feels that way.
Like it's Cam Smith, sure, but I think that Gentry is sort of more impactful on a game-to-game basis. And yeah, he had the big strip there of Donovan Edwards. Yeah, I think that you look at the big runs, I think the run fits could have been a little bit better, absolutely. But I go back to, you know, every other play, they were pretty rock solid on defense. And part of the cons of stacking the box.
Stack the box.
Is that, you know, there's not many levels of the defense, which I think we're going to get to more criticisms in the back end as we get to the DBs. But let's go to the corners. What do you got for the corners?
Giving them an A-. Obviously, they didn't have a lot to do here in terms of their main job as preventing the pass. But they, you know, corners do play a very critical role against teams that are running the ball as well, especially a team like Michigan that had decided to just run the ball on every down. And that meant running inside the tackles and outside the tackles, and you need your corners to be a part of your run defense in that case. And that's what Jaylen Smith is an absolute monster at. He had 7 tackles and a tackle for loss continually, not just in this game, in previous games, but he showed this again. He is as sure a tackler as there is in the country, and he will shed a block on the outside to prevent a runner from getting around the corner, and you cannot speak highly enough about that. Unfortunately, John Humphrey is at the center of one of the worst plays of the game for USC. I feel for John Humphrey here, though, because he had Khalil Mullings around the waist. Khalil Mullings just supermaned him and carried him 10 yards. Could he have done more to make sure that he brought down the man? Yes, but that's a rough spot for John Humphrey to be in. So yeah, I feel for it.
Yeah, I really wanted to give it incomplete.
Yeah.
But then because the pass game stuff, and the more I thought about it, I tried to think about every single pass that Alex Orji threw, with the exception of the swing passes. Every single one was defended with a corner, you know, even the safeties draped all over the receivers. They were either, you know, going to be potential picks or had no chance of being completed because there was a corner all over them ready to bat the ball away. I think the A- here comes from the Humphrey missed tackle. It's not fair. It absolutely isn't. I think he was definitely in the right place at the right time, bar a split second, because I think that he's there to make the tackle correctly. But I think if he was a split second earlier, I think he has better leverage to get the stop. He wraps him up, but isn't able to exactly get it because Mullings just can keep running his legs and sort of run through him. But the lack of a follow-up will affect my grade in the next one. Let's get to the safeties. What do you got?
Going a C. I thought Akili Arnold had some really good moments in this game. Some of his best moments thus far as a Trojan. Unfortunately, he missed a couple tackles as well.
Yeah.
Really, this C comes down to Kamari Ramsey. Kamari Ramsey is an immensely talented player who will be incredibly important to USC this year and future years. But he showed his youth in this game. I think that he has a lot more to do with that big run than John Humphrey does. He has to make that tackle, and he just lets up for whatever reason. I thought that he was not involved enough in the run defending either. You want him or any of the safeties over the top to prevent those long runs, not getting washed out in a play, not being over aggressive in a play. And unfortunately, they I think were the weaker link of what was a pretty strong defensive performance, all said.
Yeah.
But critical error there.
It's weird to say that the safeties have a tough job when they go up against a team that doesn't want to throw the ball and only throws for 32 yards. But I think this was a very difficult place for the safeties to be in because they are essentially linebackers because SC was able to,
stack the box.
Everybody was collapsed. Everybody was within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage for most of the game. And I think that it really made it difficult because once a guy was able to get into the second level, maybe they were gone. And that happened 3 different times, 2 of them for touchdowns, and another one, SC was able to, get someone to finally make the tackle 65 yards down the field. But I think that you needed the safeties to sort of, be Superman a couple of times. And that's where I feel like it's a little bit unfair to be a little, overly critical of them. So I give them a C+. But Kamari Ramsey's only played 3 games as the Trojan. This was his worst of the 3. It's a sample size that's very small, and that means very little in that sense. But when SC loses a game where you just need one more play to be made, the safeties could have been one of those positions that made that play, but they didn't. I go with a C+, because the long runs I absolutely think could have been helped out with more safety help from Ramsey and Arnold. Let's go to Danton Lynn, the defensive coordinator. What do you got for him?
So over the last couple of years, we've had a lot of conversations about who is responsible for the way that the defense plays in a certain game. Is it the player's responsibility? Is it the coach's responsibility? In this game, 100%, I think the mistakes that were made were the player's responsibility. I think Danton Lynn and the coaching staff had their guys ready to play. I think that they put them in the right spots. They set them up to succeed, and by and large, they did succeed. And they came out in the second half. The adjustments they made in the second half against the Michigan team that had decided to simply not throw the ball, which certainly is not something USC would have expected going in. They adjusted beautifully and could not, bar one play, had an impeccable half of football. I think Danton Lynn did a hell of a job. He well deserving of the A, and I think he's going to use this tape to teach a lot of lessons too on what it takes to win a game dominantly defensively. But this was, to me, a great coaching job across the board, because USC would not have been able to do this many years of defenses that we've watched. Yeah,
290 rushing yards is a lot, but you can't tell me they wouldn't have run for 400 last year.
Yeah.
So I, too, give Danton Lynn an A. He gambled with the sellout of the run, but you had to. That was the way to go, and it backfired 3 times. Not a lot of, multiple level help there, but that was the gamble you had to make, because Michigan didn't want to throw the football and didn't have a viable threat of throwing the football. So that's where he had to dial it up. That's going to wrap it up for our grades and basically wrap up our coverage of USC and Michigan. We'll be back here on YouTube later this week with a look at how the Trojans can beat Wisconsin. SC will beat Wisconsin if ... all the things that we talk about in that video end up happening. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't watched our other podcast content this week, be able to check that out too, and check out the video right here on the screen, right there. See that one? Yeah, click on it. You know you want to. Till next time, we'll see you.
See ya.
See ya.